Cassava Sciences, ticker SAVA, is the stock we're going to be analysing today. So what are going to be the key levels we're paying attention to? So this stock has kind of bounced off this low and we are pushing to the upside. So what are going to be key resistances, because that's what we'll cover first. So we have $22.75, $24.50, $27. Now, these are targets where we would use these more as targets, especially these first two. So if we were holding this stock long bias from fair value or below, obviously those would be the targets we would look to trade to. Now, coming up to 27, this is where you start coming into the second deviation. Now, the way we normally use standard deviation, and again, if you probably learned about it before, maybe not trading related, but standard deviation in general, is these gold ones. These are first deviations. That means 68% of the data is likely to trade below it. Coming into this second deviation, that's 95% of the data is likely to trade below it. So that's why we tend to use these more as targets, but I'm not a massive fan of shorting these first deviations. However, if we push up to $27, not only would I use that as a target if I was long, but it's also an area where I start to flip a lot more bearish and we'll look to trade this stock to the downside. Just to quickly note further off resistances, we do also have levels at 31 and 31.30. So again, you still got that second deviation, so that's 95%. And this green line is our third deviation, so that's 99.7% should trade below. So that's why, again, we tend to use these as targets. They're not exactly kind of fixed levels, you know, like obviously when you do normal technical analysis, like this level probably would actually be one anyway, because it lines up with previous resistances. But these deviations don't always line up with previous resistances. They're just statistical probabilities, a bit like a Fibonacci retracement is kind of how these work. So again, they're going to be key resistances. And again, it is the stock market. Nothing's going to be, say, 99.7% accurate like the third deviation suggests. But it just gives you a good indication if we come into these levels, we expect that pullback to happen. So they're the key resistances. Now, to cover the supports, we have these dashed lines here. These aren't normal supports. What this is the range between fair value between the 6-month and the 1 year. So this, again, is when SAVA is then at fair value. So the way we tend to use this level is a target if we're reversal trading. So again, if we're shorting this level, that would definitely be our target. But what we can also use this level for is if you're investing, if this is a stock you want to invest in for the long term, the way we use these levels is this is where we want to be buying at this range or below. We never, if we're investing, really want to be buying above this level because, again, normally you're going to pull back down to fair value within time. And again, if we're investing for the long term, you know, 10 to 30 years or so, that kind of difference, you know, we can be a bit more patient. We don't need to get into it today. We can wait for that pullback and then get in at a better value. Now, though, to cover into the supports, if we push to the downside, we're going to be looking at 14.50, which, yes, would be a 52-week low. But again, this you could kind of think of as like the Fibonacci extensions. They don't need to be where price has already been to give you levels, and that's why it can be lower than current prices that we've hit. But if we go lower, we have 14.50, 10.70, and 10.30 as three key supports to the downside. And that's probably what I'd be looking at more on this stock. Because to this one, again, if we just zoom out and look at this chart from a longer term outlook, what you can see is obviously very clear downtrends over the 6-month and the 1 year. When we see this, not something I usually want to be kind of trading to the upside. I'd much rather kind of short these resistances and play the move to the downside, and at a push kind of target these lower deviations. But again, if you are long bias, you want to trade this to the upside, then they can be supports to be paying attention to.